What is up, guys? So this is kind of a different kind of video, of course. I will get back on the Zelda grind, though. I've just been kind of busy behind the scenes with other stuff, but things are starting to wind down, I think. So hopefully that will be things will be good after that. So, I kind of want to talk about something that's been on my mind a little bit, and that's about the ninth generation consoles. Right, we're at the ninth, and like the sort of the commentary that goes on around it, specifically that the ninth generation of consoles has been a complete and utter failure or waste of time or just like terrible. It's like a desert of content out there and whatnot. And I kind of want to look at it in a different way, in a way that's like more, I guess, positive, if I'm allowed to do that. Kind of the upside of the ninth generation of consoles and gaming in general, right? So what do I mean by this? So one of the biggest problems people have with the ninth gen consoles is that there have yet to be any games made from the ground up specifically for the ninth generation hardware. I mean, most people don't really count the Switch. The Switch is kind of in its own world. I personally count it as a ninth generation console just because it is the or it's part of that. It's directly competitive with, the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, even though, it came out during the later part of the PS4, Xbox One. I don't know. But in any event, I'm talking mostly, when I talk about ninth gen, I'm specifically referring to the Xbox Series consoles and the PS5, right? And the biggest complaint is that, again, there's not much software being developed specifically for those new consoles. They're still making versions, like cross-generation games, essentially. And that was kind of a complaint people also had with going from the 7th to 8th gen, too. For the longest time, people were complaining about how PS4 games were still coming out on PS3, and Xbox One games were still getting Xbox 360 versions. The only games that I can think of that were doing that were, I think, Gran Turismo 6 came out on the PS3, even though the PS4 was out at the time, and Destiny was getting released on, cross-gen and all that fun stuff. Those are the only two I remember, although I'm sure there were more games that were released. I'm just forgetting. I mean, that was a while ago at this point anyway. But that eventually did end, and you started getting just PS4 and Xbox One games and all that fun stuff. And the 360 and PS3 went into the sunset, and that was the end of them. But that has yet to happen with the ninth generation of consoles 4 years later, 4 years into their lifespan, about halfway at this point. Well, actually, if we're going to be totally honest, on average, this would be the end, but we're about halfway through their lifespan. They are still, like, the old 8th gen consoles, now over 10 years old, both, are still getting those big, like, major releases ported to them. And a lot of people think that to say that that's not good because the ninth generation consoles aren't getting the full support that they need, and they're not being utilized properly. There's no point in having them, all that fun stuff. And I guess if you've been, if you worked as hard as you did to get like a PS5, for example, and just to not get a true, like, from the ground up PS5 game, then, like, to a certain extent, I can understand that. But I kind of want to talk about something from a different perspective here, and that's the perspective of, let's say you are... All right, I'm just going to talk from personal experience, okay? I come from a background that's, like, the kind of flirted with the poverty line, so to speak, right? And so we affording like a video game console was like that was luxury. That was a real luxury. I remember when we got a GameCube. I think in 2002, I think, like the summer. It was when that bundle with Super Mario Sunshine came out. That's when we got it. And we stuck with that GameCube for as long as we could until finally it just stopped reading discs. Funnily enough, just as a side note, my brother recently got that same GameCube working again. All he had to do was like replace the laser, essentially, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so that GameCube died, and we only really had a Super Nintendo that was given to us. And so we kind of like, that was pretty much the only video game we could really do, because the GameCube was just done. The last game it could read was Sonic Adventure 2, and it stopped reading that disc, so all of them were pretty much kaput at that point. It was just no GameCube. I mean, it worked, it turned on, but no discs. Couldn't read them. And so we eventually got a replacement GameCube for like $30, certified refurbished from GameStop. Later that year, I think, and it lasted almost a year before it too started to develop the same disc reading problems, and eventually, it was only a matter of time before that one also became a brick, essentially, and it actually turned into a brick faster, if I remember correctly, than the first one, and so after that it was just like done, right? The Nintendo Wii had been out for a couple of years at that point, and the Wii was backwards compatible with GameCube games, and that ultimately, I guess, was the selling point for it, because we had such a collection of GameCube games at that point, and no hardware to play them on, right? But getting a Wii was like a big deal, even though it was the cheapest of the consoles at that point. I couldn't imagine getting something like an Xbox 360 or even a PS3, and that was like rich people stuff, right? The Wii was just like perfect for like the price point and everything like that, plus the library of games, etc., etc. Plus, Mario and Sonic. I mean, Sonic was, aside from like Sonic 06 and the ports of Sonic Unleashed and the Sonic Generations that came out later on the 360 and PS3. Those, aside from those, most of the Sonic games that came out that time, we were huge Sonic fans. They were coming out on the Wii, so it made sense to just like get the Wii, and we really liked it and enjoyed it. Got a lot of mileage out of it. But then the Wii was dropped, and the Wii U came out, and the Xbox One and PS4 came out, and and now the Wii ended up being like the newest console we would own ever, essentially, until even until now for me, mostly because I have a PC that can run games, so it kind of, I like to get the old consoles, but anyway, that's beside the point. When the Wii lost, all of its support went away, and all that was coming out was like Just Dance games. You were left with what you had, or like what was left at stores, essentially, right? And it was kind of a weird thing, because like I had always liked to kind of follow what games were coming out, even if it was on like the 360 or PS3. I always like to follow that, and like I still continued to follow it, but I watched it like march away, kind of thing. I was no longer with it anymore. It was just leaving me behind, essentially, and not having access to like Wii U games, for example. when that was new. I thought the Wii U was the coolest thing, actually. Believe it or not, I was probably like one of 4 people in the world who thought so. But like explaining what upgrading a console means is hard when the person you're explaining it to has no concept of it. Someone who's like, a PlayStation is a PlayStation is a PlayStation. They're all the same. Why can't you put a PlayStation 5 or a PlayStation 4 game into your PS1? That's a real question that I was asked. Because Battlefront, the first EA Battlefront was coming out, and the trailers looked amazing. I'm like, this is the reason to get like a PS4. I just said offhand, and I was asked, well, you have a PlayStation already. Why can't you just put it on there? And it's a PS1, So like, there's explaining the difference in like hardware, like how it needs to be upgraded every few years or so, is just like really difficult to explain. So, but yeah, so being in that situation, kind of like being out of the loop of like the newest games and what was coming out, was kind of like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Although I did have a laptop at the time, an HP Pavilion. It had an AMD A6 quad core like APU or whatever, with like a Radeon. Wait, what was it? I can't remember what kind of graphic. I think it was called Radeon graphics or something. In any event, that thing really did a lot of like, man, I could run GTA 4 on that. To this day, I have no idea, because I hear all these horror stories about the PC port of GTA 4, and how even with like the most high-end setup you can, like gaming setup you can get, it still doesn't run quite as well as it ought to. And that just kind of blows my mind that 10 years ago I was playing GTA 4 on a budget like gaming PC. Essentially, I didn't even think it was a budget gaming PC. I just thought it was a laptop, so I was kind of lucky in that regard. But yeah, in any event, so when that computer did a lot. Of course, I didn't really buy a lot of Steam games in the beginning, but anyway, that's a totally different story. Now I have a lot of Steam games. But so one of the cool things about the 8th generation and the 9th generation is that, if I were someone like I was, like, if I was the same age now as I was back when like the Wii was coming out and it was getting kind of long in the tooth or something like that, and new hardware was coming out kind of replacing it. But like the idea that like, you're in a situation where like financially is just out of the question. You cannot afford the $500 to put down on, a brand new PlayStation 5, when like collections people are, pounding, coming to the door and all that stuff, So, this idea that like, you can get like a PS4 for like $200 and it will play, and games that are brand new are still coming out for it, that kind of like access for people of lesser means to still be able to continue to get some kind of, value or mileage out of this older hardware. In that case, I actually think it's not all that bad, honestly. I mean, yeah, maybe from a business standpoint and like for investors and, for people who have adopted the new hardware that, care so much about the hardware being pushed to its absolute limits in terms of its like technical and visual output and whatever, then I guess, yeah, I can see that. But at the same time, people of lesser means still having access to entertainment, this kind of like almost in a way it kind of it kind of pushes aside the idea of the FOMO marketing, the fear of missing out. I kind of like that. And I don't know. I honestly, I mean, yeah, there are some downsides, again, as I mentioned before, especially on the business side for these companies. But for like people in general and people of lesser means, honestly, it's kind of a win in my opinion. At least someone who, as someone who came from that kind of environment, financial environment. So, yeah, I don't know. Personally, I think it's pretty good. I think it's good. Oh man, but yeah, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts, though. Kind of like rambling at this point, but I thought I would say something about it. But in any event, let me know what you thought about this in the comments below. I don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about like the good implications of PS4 and Xbox One still being supported, having new software released for it alongside cross-generation games and all that stuff. So I thought I would kind of throw my unsolicited 2 cents into it. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time with another video. Until then,